We constantly see the access media lying about video games and trying to push the narrative that gamers are dangerous and terrible, unhinged incels, and that exact thing is happening because they are running defense for Ghost of Yotei, saying these new games coming out with lead females are being unfairly targeted, and even titles like Hades 2 proves that characters can be both diverse and hot. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, we knew with Ghost of Yotei they were going to be running defense for it as much as possible, and they definitely are, but the angle that they're taking is how unfair games with women typically are treated and how diverse casts of characters are targeted the most. So there are two different articles that I wanted to highlight, both from The Gamer, of course, and this first one is titled Hades 2 Proves That Characters Can Be Both Diverse and Hot. So they are directly pinning Stellar Blade versus Hades 2 against each other, which I definitely think is unfair. Of course, there are people that write for these outlets who think that gamers are unfair, toxic bigots, right? That we only talk about games when they have females that are hot, otherwise we attack them. But that definitely isn't the case. Stellar Blade was a great game all around, and of course, having a gorgeous lead character did help the marketing, but it didn't make the game as special as it really was, though, of course, these people constantly say that we are toxic, yet they are the ones that are targeting our games because these individuals don't actually play games, but they're pinning them against each other to try to own the chuds. So it says, as much as I hate to admit it, I think a lot about Eve from Stellar Blade, not because she's the most hot, surreal fact that her shapely behind and jiggle physics have somehow caused what feels like a culture-wide meltdown. Her being a slim, thick Asian baddie has somehow galvanized a vocal contingent of gamers who are adamant that modern games are forced to be completely sexless because the woke mob hates hot girls. These people do not actually want to present our arguments because they want to make us seem like we are extremely dumb. It's like how the mainstream media, like the MSNBCs, right, for so many years have pushed, oh, conservatives being stupid rednecks, because it's easier to try to sell the masses on that instead of actually giving everybody our argument. Our argument is that the activists within the industry are intentionally toning down women, and it's like they don't know how to make women because they do not like women. Modern AAA Western developers make women into men. They take a female skin, but really they're reskinning a male character instead of what we see Asian developers doing and Eastern, I guess we'll say, developers doing, where they take a woman and they make her a woman. Women characters who look more akin to real-life people are often derided as ugly, and the relatively common practice of DEI consultation is pegged at the cause, and you're saying that it's not. You are saying that there's no possible way that that is the case. We know that these companies have checklists that they go down, and they have to check off as many boxes as possible. And that means that we get characters who are this and that and this and that. Oh, a woman, that's black, that's a lesbian. Like, you have to come to the realization at some point that this is happening, even if you're only saying it happens on a certain level. To deny its existence at all in terms of game development is absolutely stupid of you, because we know that you're straight up lying. They talk about, though, how the thing about Eve is that she's very conventionally attractive if you subscribe to society's beliefs of what makes a person hot. 90% of the population subscribes to the belief that being conventionally attractive is what makes a character hot. And we're not just talking about physically either, we're also talking about emotionally. Eve is a character who grows throughout the game. Eve is a character who does make mistakes, but she learns from them. Like, she's a very interesting and complex character, but you're not going to bring that up. It says, Issy van der Velden, formerly of The Gamer, oh yeah, because you're propping up your own ilk, wrote an excellent piece for Inverse about how Eve caters heavily to the male gaze. What is the problem with making characters that people actually want to see? Why is that such a big issue? They talk about, though, Hades 2 and kind of the comparison. They say that queer bent isn't token at all. Inclusivity is at the core of Hades, and it follows through with its character designs. Hades 2 picks up that torch and carries it even further. My fellow features editor Ben Sledge wrote about how Hades 2 is leaning harder into diverse representation by making more diverse character designs. It's a video game, okay? And it's fine if you want to put these types of characters in your game. I'm not sitting here saying these developers have to change their character designs, but at the same time, they really are only appealing to a certain section of players with that, and it's fine if you like them, but it's also fine that we criticize them. They say Stellar Blade caters to the kind of player that finds Eve hot, but that kind of attractiveness doesn't appeal to everyone. And you're saying the character designs in Hades 2, where some of the females look like trans characters, is what appeals to everybody? No, that is not the case, and stop trying to pretend that it is. And we also have this article talking about 2025's biggest sequels, All-Star Women, and only one received backlash. Maybe you just outed yourself and you're admitting that there's a common factor here, sure, but the one that is being criticized because it's not a good game. Because people don't like the people behind this game. Because the people behind this game are extremely controversial, and that's why people are criticizing it, not because it's women. They always try to paint us as sexist, toxic bigots, yet they just admitted that all of the biggest games have women. So clearly, the problem isn't the fact that she's a woman. It says, though, that you might expect this to stir up some backlash in terms of sequels and female protagonists, and in one case it did, but the division of outrage amongst the three reveals quite a bit about how gaming is discussed in 2025. They say that Hollow Knight, Silksong, and Hades 2 dodged the discourse, but of course, Yotei doesn't. When Ghost of Yotei was revealed in 2024, it was met with a degree of backlash. Streamer Asmongold famously asked, "Do I have to play as a girl?" upon seeing the reveal trailer. Yeah, because people were expecting Ghost of Tsushima 2. People were expecting to be able to continue Jin Sakai's story, and that's what people wanted. People didn't want them to replace Jin with Atsu, and I said this all of these years ago. I thought that the sequel, if it wasn't going to be Jin, was going to be Yuna. And I think people would generally have been okay with that because Yuna was a good character. But to push it 300 years in the future and pick this new character, that was already going to be a bit controversial, but you add all the problems into the mix. It wasn't just that there was a female character. You had Erika Ishii, who is a self-admitted terrorist because she is part of Antifa. You have them replacing Jin with Atsu, of course. Then you have the very disgusting comments made by developers over Charlie Kirk's assassination. And then, adding all of that, you have the Sucker Punch co-founder coming out and saying, it's kind of not our company culture to wish death upon people, and it's sort of not all right, which made it look like he was forced into making a statement, but he didn't quite apologize. It says, though he phrased it quite uniquely, first grader coded way, Asmongold was far from the only person to express this sentiment. A subset of gamers will always be mad seeing women lead video games, especially if they aren't conventionally attractive. It was just one example, with similar outrage hitting The Witcher 4, Star Wars Outlaws, Intergalactic, The Heretic Prophet, to name a few. Yeah, but in the case of Witcher 4, we had Ciri, who previously looked gorgeous, and sure, I don't think that she looks drastically different, but she definitely does look a little bit different. And that is kind of shocking to people when they have a certain image of a character in their mind. You also have Star Wars Outlaws, who took the gorgeous Humberly Gonzalez and then completely beat her with the ugly stick in the game. And Intergalactic, The Heretic Prophet isn't just about Tati Gabrielle not being conventionally attractive. It's also her coming out and trying to own the chuds and the incel tears meme that she posted, which of course wasn't funny at all whatsoever, and her just acting like a straight up bitch. That's the problem. So we're not just talking about, ooh, women are the problem. You straight up admit here that women are not the major issue. This year, we got Expedition 33, which has some of the best female characters ever written in video games, in my opinion. You have Hornet in Silksong, who actually has a lot of depth, who is a very interesting character who carries over from the first game. Hollow Knight did it better than Ghost of Tsushima in Yotei because you had Hornet showing up in the first game, and then the second game was about her. If you had Jin Sakai and Yuna in the first game, the second should have been Yuna if you weren't going to go with Jin. People wouldn't have been that upset. That's the natural progression of things. And of course, we've had plenty of other titles to release this year with females that they don't even mention, like Chronos, for example. Chronos The New Dawn is a pretty freaking good game who has a female. Nobody complained about that because it's not about, ooh, ew, evil women. That's not the case. You need to stop pushing this false narrative because it just makes you look even more ridiculous. And we also know that they try to push the narrative that games make people toxic, which isn't the case. I did another video on this. It will be linked down below. But according to research from a US university, no effect leading to gender discrimination or misogyny were observed even when female characters in games were depicted in a sexy manner. It seems difficult to attribute social issues to games. So maybe gamers are just talking about what they like and dislike in a game, and it really has nothing to do with the female character, and it actually has to do with the way that the developers are presenting the female character, but these people have too low of an IQ to really comprehend that. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.